Hello to everyone attending the Empower, Ignite, and Soar virtual summit. We are wrapping up day one with a fantastic interview with Gabi Garcia, or Gabriella. Gabi?
Gabi's good.
She is a professional counselor, and so she works with children, and she'll tell you a little bit more about what she does. She is also a children's book author, and that is how Gabi and I first connected, because as you know, I write children's books as well. So I'm going to have her tell you a little bit about what she's been doing professionally and tell you a little bit about her books too. Over to you, Gabi.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Thanks for including me. So yeah, I am an LPC, and so in Texas, I'm a licensed professional counselor, and my work has primarily been working with students in the school setting. So I've been working with students in the school setting for over 20 years. I did start out as a teacher, so I started there, and now what I'm doing is counseling. I go to different schools. I do all age levels, so it's K through 12. And I've also had a private practice. I've done a little bit of coaching in the past. And yes, as you mentioned, I've also written a couple of children's books. The first one was called Listening to My Body. And the goal of that was to help kids make the connection between their sensations and their feelings. So what is it that their bodies experience when they feel frustrated or mad or calm? You know, we want to go to both sides of the spectrum. And my most recent book is Listening with My Heart, and it's a story of kindness and self-compassion.
Excellent. You know, we had another interview today talking about, even as adults, the ability to recognize your emotion and take a moment to find what's in that space. So you have the body alarm, your heart is starting to palpitate, your cheeks are starting to get red and hot, and just taking a moment to say, what is happening? What am I feeling right now before reacting? So that way your response can be a little bit more healthy. And so that's, you know, it's interesting because we talk about body alarms and self-regulation in adults, but for children, it's so important for them to learn, because if they can recognize those alarms within their body, those sensations that you were talking about, they can then come up with a strategy that is helpful to them, whether it be, you know, deep breathing, counting to 10, but to be able to get them through that situation in a healthy way instead of just reacting and regretting that reaction. So both of your books really put both of those into practice for children, which is fantastic.
Yes, and I mean, it definitely is important to teach kids. I know I have my 4-year-old daughter, and we started talking, we started using the language around listening to her body from a pretty young age. You know, I think initially it might have started with, you know, hunger or going to the bathroom, or, you know, being cold, you know, just paying attention to physical cues that she was getting. And then as she's gotten a little bit older, making the connection between, you know, this is one that we use quite a bit lately, is when she's hungry, she, like all of us, is more likely to get cranky and frustrated. And so, you know, that's just a really good example that she is starting to understand and make that connection and have that relationship as well. So,
oh, that's wonderful.
And that's really young.
And I love the fact that you are connecting to children at a very young age, like you said, bodily cues that we have to use the restroom or that we're hungry, but you work with children all the way from kindergarten up through 12th grade. So when we talk about compassion, self-compassion today, if you can take a moment to kind of connect it into different age levels, that would be helpful, because I know parents and educators are working with all different ages who are viewing this. So let's jump in. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what is self-compassion?
Sure. Well, and I think just putting it this way is a way that kids across all ages and adults, parents, teachers can understand. So one simple way to describe it is self-compassion is the practice of being a friend to ourselves. And I know that, you know, when you put it that way, it's it's one of those things that sounds really simple, but is actually, you know, a lot harder to put in practice than we actually think it might be.
There's the old saying with Facebook and social media, don't put anything online that you wouldn't want your grandmother to read. And I think about self-compassion. Don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to your own best friends. I think we're really hard on ourselves, and we can be really mean to ourselves. And so what you're saying is self-compassion is treating yourself as you would treat a friend.
Definitely. Yeah.
That's a good definition of it. So tell us why it's important for kids and for parents to practice self-compassion.
Sure. You know, we live in an extremely achievement-oriented society. I mean, it is all around us for our kids, for us as parents, as, you know, as adults. And so from a very early age, kids are getting the message that their sense of worth is attached to all of these achievements or externals. So whether it's grades or what we look like, or whether we scored or, you know, just scored in a certain, you know, football or baseball or soccer, or whether we won first place or made the A honor roll, you know. So we do get, kids get so many messages about what is valued in our culture. And when they don't meet those standards is when, you know, that self-criticism really starts to kick in. And, you know, it starts to kick in fairly young.
Yeah. So the importance of being kind to ourselves is so that we can see that our worth is not connected to all of those achievements.
Right. And help to build emotional resiliency, really.
Oh, I love that. You know, when I was in college, I struggled with this, and so I could have really used practicing self-compassion in college. I thought that good grades equated good person. And then after college, I felt that running in marathons and winning races equaled good person. And it was exhausting. And I experienced burnout. I got to the point of like frustration. Like, what am I living my life for? I'm like spending hours a day running and overachieving for what? To prove to everyone that I was a good person. And the moment that I could shift that mindset and realize that all of those things did not define who I was as a person, life became so much lighter and life became so much more enjoyable. And so now I live each day doing things that bring me joy and not just that achievement focus. So as an adult, I had to learn that late in life. And so I hope that as parents, we can teach our children this at a young age. So how can you teach this to children at a young age? Because it's such an internal conversation that we're having with ourselves. So how, like for a young child, can you explain a couple like hands-on, like actual things we can do?
Sure. Well, okay, so let me back up a little bit. But before we get to how we can teach it to ourselves, I do think it's really important that as parents, we're actually modeling and practicing this for ourselves, because, you know, our children are watching us. You know, we are their primary teachers. And so just kind of reflecting, thinking about how do we react when we fall short? How do we react when we experience disappointment? You know, just being mindful of our own reaction to our own setbacks and to our own disappointments. Because if we don't have that awareness, then they're still going to see that modeled, right? That sort of like what you were saying. If you don't run the marathon, then I'm, you know, somehow not worthy. Yeah. You know, a few days ago, I was reading about a study done at Harvard, and this was a few years back, but it was looking at the differences in terms of what parents said they valued versus what kids perceived that their parents valued. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I think that the researchers, without going into too much detail, had asked both sets, parents and kids, to rank in order of priority. I think it was happiness, achievement, and being kind to others.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and so parents, valued happiness, number one, being kind to others, and achievement was third. What kids perceived that their parents valued was, can you guess?
Achievement.
Achievement. Yep. Achievement, happiness, and then being kind to others. Like, that was definitely
eye-opening. And we see this. I mean, we see this in all of the negative media that's happening in the world. We see these outbursts from teenagers and children and parents at sporting events fighting each other over, a goal that was, not a goal, and just determining who was the winner. That's what the kids are seeing. So that's a very interesting and eye-opening study. So first, practicing self-compassion as a parent and letting your children see that. Now, how can we help our children?
Well, normalizing disappointment, normalizing setbacks, just normalizing failure. All of those things are a part of the human experience, really. It's what connects us to others. We all experience that. But what often tends to happen is that when we lose or we fail or, we somehow are disappointed, we feel like, oh, this somehow shouldn't be happening, or this shouldn't be happening to me, or somehow it's not fair. But really, it's just part of the human experience. We are all going to feel disappointment. We are all going to feel a sense of loss. We're all going to have setbacks. And so just normalizing that happens, and that, I guess the flip side too is just talking to kids about that all of those externals are not what their worth is about, right? Mm-hmm. And helping them to see what messages, even if you go to a supermarket, what messages do girls get at the checkout line about what's valued? Just having those conversations. It doesn't always have to be, let's sit down and talk about self-compassion, but just, it could be incorporated into our daily life in terms of what messages do boys get? What messages do girls get? What messages do we all get about what is worthy in our culture?
There's I was taking notes, by the way, because when I hear somebody say something so valuable, I need to write it down. I'm not just a host here. I'm also a parent who is learning and who is so thrilled to have all of these fabulous experts in these interviews. So thank you. But I have to say, 2 times throughout the day that I am thinking as a parent, I can have these conversations and help normalize these negative experiences that my children have, and remind them that it's all part of the human experience. Walking home from the bus stop is one. We have quite a walk, and it's just us, and we don't have any distractions other than maybe a car or a bird or a dog or a cat. And then in the car, we actually do have like a DVD player in the car, but we only use it for really long trips. And from going to A to B and to B to C on our normal day to day, we are just talking. And sometimes they're goofing around and yelling, and I'm saying, I can't drive with these distractions. But it's a really good time to have conversations like these because there's not a ton of distractions. So for those parents listening, I know we have some live viewers, but we also are going to have a lot of viewers throughout the next 24 hours. Think about what times throughout the day can you intentionally talk to your kids about those disappointments that they're experiencing, or the loss, or any of those negative aspects that might be affecting their self-compassion.
Right. And to go along with that, another practice might be, if you notice that your child is maybe engaging in negative self-talk, or even if they're not, if, sort of maybe before that happens, if you're talking to them about disappointments, asking them, what would be comforting or soothing, what comforting or soothing words or phrases would you like to hear if you're feeling sad, or if you're feeling disappointed, or if something doesn't go the way that you want? Having them think about that. And then I also like to have, and this is the students that I work with, and it's in the book, but it's also like a free resource. I ask them to write them down. And so that way, when they need them, they can go back to them, and it's their own writing. It's their own phrases that they've come up with.
It's more meaningful when they've written it themselves. And
yeah, and they're thinking about what would help me. Sometimes we want to give it to the kids. I mean, obviously we want to comfort and we want to soothe them too. And it's important that we as parents do that. But, we're also teaching our kids to comfort and soothe themselves.
That's excellent. There's also affirmations, which I found to be really helpful, because sometimes as a parent, I can't come up with all of these sayings. So we actually have cards that I've gotten from online. You can get them on free on Pinterest. And I have them by the kitchen table. They're in a drawer. And before breakfast, maybe 3 days out of 5, I'll pull out a couple affirmations and put them next to their meal, and they'll read them out loud to each other. And this morning, one of our children was having a hard time, and I noticed my husband and we just started saying affirmations like, you are a good friend and you can be kind to others. And it was funny. I just looked at him. I'm like, okay, we're getting used to this. Okay. But it's a constant practice. Like you said, it's constantly listening to our children and making a point of it so that it's part of their daily routine to be kind to themselves.
Yeah, and also holding that space for them, with them, if they're feeling sad, letting them know that it's okay to feel sad in that moment. We don't need to necessarily rush to change it or to fix it. One of the things that I like to do, and I learned this, a lot of my work comes from my study and understanding of Kristen Neff's work, who is a self-compassion researcher.
Okay.
And, one of the practices that I also like for myself, and I teach this to students, is just simply like placing your hand on your heart when you feel sad, just to pause and acknowledge that, because that's where that mindful awareness really comes in. It's like, that was hard for me, or that was sad. And just giving it that space that, we need.
I like that action.
Yeah, it's easy sometimes to just want to go into, for me, I know, to go into that problem solving mode. And,
sadness, how do I fix it? Anger, how do I fix it?
Right. And, sometimes that's not what we need. We're not there yet. So it doesn't mean that we're not going to get there, but we're not there yet. And so how do we hold space for that? So yes, definitely the action of putting your hand on your heart and acknowledging the feeling is a mindfulness practice. The other reason that I like this is that it's important to incorporate touch in these practices. Touch stimulates the production of the oxytocin, a feel-good hormone. And so as much as I can, I like to teach the students that I work with and my own child to incorporate touch in their self-soothing practices. So whether it's touching their heart, the other thing that I like to teach is I ask them to give themselves a hug. And so I'll say, hug yourself the way that you like to be hugged. So whether it's like really tight or just a gentle, hug where you're moving your hands up and down, because those are soothing practices, and they're going to release that, like I said, that feel-good hormone. One other one, and this actually a student that I was working with, we modified it. He had a lot of cats, and so he was talking about how he would stroke his cat that. And then he just started, so I asked him, can you do that to your arm? So he just started doing that. And it was really soothing for him to do that for himself. But touch is really important to incorporate in these self-compassion practices. If we're, holding space for ourselves or just acknowledging that, it's hard or it's tough, it helps to release those hormones, and it's always good to incorporate.
Beautiful. This is beautiful. It's so powerful to be able to incorporate this into our classroom or into our teaching, because this will make children feel better. The acknowledgement, the soothing, the touch, the self-regulation, the self-compassion. This has been fantastic. And it's not over yet, because I wanted to tell everyone that you are actually offering a Listening with My Heart poster bundle. And the link is in the comments below at your website, GabiGarciaBooks.com. And just really helpful reminders. Is that what the poster bundle is?
Yeah, the posters are reminders, I think, of a couple of the practices that I've talked about today. Yes.
Fantastic. Gabi, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your time, your expertise, and your generosity today. I really appreciate it. And, I know I've checked on our video from this morning, and it's already had over 300 views. So I know a lot of this is making a difference in our children's lives by going out to parents, caregivers, and educators. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for putting this together. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too.